Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
The ramshackle, peaceful sections led in the fire, and smoke rose above the slender structure, filled with the incomparable aroma of nature-cooked food. Rick carefully placed a few logs into the fire on top of the man-made volcano, and immediately pounced greedily on a new portion, which made the sounds intensify, and there were even aggressive notes in them. I am not and is not too active. Ear doesn't like sudden movements. Sam liked to make remarks to others, but couldn't stand it when his friends pointed out his shortcomings. He used precise movements to prepare combustible material for the fire. But this did not prevent him from watching Rick's actions. He ignored his comrade's words with ostentatious disdain. But after a couple of minutes, he sent his own ball into the enemy's goal. Don't get smart, Sam. Who are you handing out to here? The owner of the pitch. I've got it down to the second, you might say. He's Jack. He can attest to that. He and I got into a lot of trouble in the service. Really, lying a dozen meters away from the fire, Rick and Jack were setting up the tent. They were looking toward the fire with a smile, but they refrained from commenting. Only when the subject of service came up did Jack nod affirmatively. Yes, it was a thing. Sometimes I have nightmares at night. I can't believe we're still alive. Rick was distracted from the task at hand. They may have been rescued, but there's a little bit of radiation drowning them. True, we are not allowed to talk about it, but some of those who were on that trip. Anyway, the boys have some serious health problems. Apparently, the unpleasant memories took the owner of the clearing out of balance, and he threw a whole pile of wood into the fire. The flames rushed upward, and Sam cursed profanely. Rick, you're out of your mind. You want to make a kebab out of me? Who taught you how to do that? Rick laughed, but the man's laughter sounded more like thunder, so the flames flickered fearfully. Sam, all the best, so to speak. I take from my friends, including you. You think you're the only critic in the world who is a businessman and has no money. But there are better people than you. You're the tougher one. Now Sam was laughing, and for convincing he waved his hands expressively at the talking argument. The flames of the fire reacted with wild affection. Rick decided to separate the wrestlers to different corners of the ring. All right, men, stop. I see that our evening is getting a little too languid, and I don't like that you're acting like chocolates. We agreed not to get into a fight here. We're out in the country for once to relax, and you can't decide how to make soup out of the 3 miserable fish we caught. Rick deliberately changed the subject so as not to aggravate the situation. I must say that criticism had an effect on the disputants. Silence hung over the clearing. The campfire, too, went into its former peaceful mode. Patrice Keene did not. Such a defensive moment Jack could not miss. He, thrusting his right hand forward, uttered. And so it had always been when, by tradition, the 4 friends went fishing on the last day of summer. After all, for the restless men, the main thing is not the catch, but the process itself. Rick clapped his hands. Bravo, Jack. It was like a theater. The theater burned down and the clowns scattered. Sam, satisfied with his joke, rubbed his hands together, waiting for a response. He looked from one comrade to another. Rick deftly threw a branch at him. Guys, there may be a provocateur in our ranks. He is the instigator of all scandals. Near him, the merry anglers made a pile of mala, forgetting the cause of the dispute. Someone shouted exasperatedly, guys, be careful, move away from the fire. We'll be left without dinner. A light warm-up was good for the whole company. The cause of the dispute was soon forgotten. The moment came when experienced fishermen began to tell tales. Kaz, on the rights of the duty officer, filled the bowls of his comrades with fragrant vam. But my friends, God willing, not for the last time. Jack added in the same acting manner, and every year by tradition, the owner of the glade said these sacred words, and each time he forgot the most important thing. Rick looked at his comrade, confused. What are you implying? Cicero himself is a disgraced man. And I'm not hinting, I'm speaking plainly. And every time he forgot that life is short. Which means what? The company has bellowed with glee. It's time to kick you white. Above the clearing the night had already completely descended, and only from above the cheeky moon was watching the friends. The rejection of Scarecrow's pleasant warmth. After a hearty dinner anchored by a roast of strong drink, the male soul demanded hearty conversations. Rick wiggled the corners of a thin branch. It's good that in this life there are such rare moments when you can just sit by the fire and have a drink or two. Friends, maybe we could do it again. Rick showed me the empty mug. But Jack nixed his comrade's attempt to continue the banquet. What do you want to do? I'm out. I just want to rest. Breathe this incredibly tasty air. This perpetual run up the vertical, the desire to leave more money. Honestly, all the posts. Also, my wife's mom came to visit us the other day. Said she was coming for a couple days. But it feels like forever to me. I understand your heartbreak. I sympathize. No, more than that. I'm sorry for your loss. Noticing that the former coworkers again diverted Sam's attention, he defiantly poured tea from a thermos into his mug and said loudly, "Who wants some?" My wife prepares a wonderful drink, saves from all diseases. She is a professional in these matters. She knows about every herb. Jack is revitalized. You know, when I was a child, I was once saved from certain death by a grandmother who also used herbs. And what ailment overcame you? A lot of foolishness. I ate some mushrooms on a bet with the local boys and almost lost my life. Rick continued with undisguised indignation in his voice. In my practice, such cases almost every day. In today's youth, now went such a fashion to do stupid things. Jack revived. Rick, here you are as a professional doctor. Tell me, really, which doctor can heal? The man sighed heavily. I don't like to talk about work during the vacation, so I want to get away from everything for a few days. But to your question, Jack, I will answer positively. Such examples have happened, and in my practice, there was one patient with terminal cancer. No chance. Suddenly he disappeared from my sight, and I thought that all went away, and he shows up a year later. You could smoke a cigarette from his face. He's so healthy. And where did the comrade take aim? You won't believe me, I still don't know. He just said he went to see Shamanov. Holy shit. A certified doctor believes these stories. Sam's voice was full of sarcasm and even hostility. Now it's clear that sick people avoid hospitals. For example, people make appointments with my wife a week in advance. Rick glanced at Sam. Your wife isn't afraid of someone dying because of her. I do not deny the possibility of folk medicine, but I believe that it can be used only as an aid. You can't cure a serious illness with herbs. Rick said it very loudly. Men, I do not like this topic. Not for the same reason we went to the countryside to talk about diseases. Let's move on to something more positive. Look what the owner of the meadow has. The man pulled out from behind his back another bottle of hot drinks, glittering with magical light. This gesture was met with applause by the entire company. Only the perpetually disgruntled Sam stretched out. Now our Rick will begin to tell tales that have long since most over with old age. Those who don't like it can go out the door. The men laughed, and Sam pressed his lips together resentfully, but did not dare to leave the company. Rick decided that it was time to finally decide on the subject of purely men's gatherings. Guys, let's forget about the sad stuff. I have one more story on the subject of fishing. Anyway, a man liked to go fishing, so his wife wouldn't suspect a thing. He'd say he was going fishing with his friends. After the dates, he'd go to the supermarket and buy live fish, but one day it's a bummer. He walks into the outlet, and the aquarium is empty. He goes to another store, and there's nothing there either. So the cheating bastard gets out of it. He bought 2 kilos of frozen sex. Kaz figured out his trick and said, "Honey, what did you catch in your river?" "Only headless fish." And the man, he didn't get confused. He says it's my dear. The consequences of civilization have polluted nature. That's why there are only headless mutants in the river. Rick looked at his friends. Let's get some sleep. Because tonight I know with some black humor will come. Maybe in the morning on a fresh head more light thoughts will be born. The company spent almost 3 days together, enjoying the freedom and the last warmth of the passing summer. Although the total catch was very modest, everyone was satisfied with the trip. The friends cleaned up the trash and loaded into the car, tents, and other gear. Before parting, Rick pulled a coworker aside. "I've been watching you for 3 days, and I'll be honest, I don't like the look of you. There's nothing troubling you health-wise." The man shrugged. "No, nothing like that, except for the fatigue. You know, I wake up in the morning feeling like I've been carrying bags all night. Well, it's probably just the sheer workload. Sometimes I have to work around the clock. And then my wife's mom shows up, one thing on top of another. Hence the fatigue. Jack, I'd advise you to get a checkup and don't wait too long." "Rick, are you scaring me? When he gets sick, then I'll come and see you. When it gets sick, it'll be too late. Alas, statistics are stubborn. They show that, unfortunately, the patients themselves are often to blame for the unfortunate outcome. That's why I recommend you get yourself checked out. It won't take long. Here's my card. Try not to make any noise." Jack carefully opened the door. From the back of the apartment came the sounds of the television and the smells of cooking food from the kitchen. The man wrinkled his nose, thinking that his wife's mother was making her crowning beet chowder again. "Just the smell of it makes me sick." No sooner had this thought gone into the memory archives than an irritated voice came from the kitchen. He came by the smell of gasoline. "I smell it. Your husband's home from work. Meet him." From the other side, where the TV was blaring almost at full blast, I heard my wife's voice. "Mom, why are you yelling at the whole apartment? All the neighbors know about our family business, and I don't like it." Courageous Molly, without changing her location, cheerfully replied, "It's not a big deal. In the days of my communal youth, neighbors were more than people living in the same place. We used to celebrate holidays together and send them off on their last journey." The sound of the TV suddenly cut off, and Nancy appeared in the hallway. "Hi, Jack. Mom, you really can't smell your license for miles. You can't breathe gasoline. Couldn't you change your clothes?" The man was trying to tackle the rooms with his slippers. "Thank you, dear wife, for the warm welcome. If you look at me carefully, you'll notice I'm wearing overalls. And the suit? Unfortunately, my place of business is a car service, not a beauty parlor. And anyway, you could at least ask about my business and health for the sake of decency." "Nancy." I looked at him blankly. "You'd be ashamed to talk about your health. You're like a moose. But my mom's blood pressure is skyrocketing all day today. She has to stand at the stove. What would you do to help your mom? It's not like you work and stay home all day. By the way, what does Kelly do?" I don't know where the disgruntled grumbling of a 15-year-old daughter came from. I'm doing homework in my daughter's room, something rattles. And then Kelly showed up with the same noise. How many times do we have to fight? It's the same thing every day. Grandma can't stand the smell of gasoline. You, Mom, you don't know what you're doing. Dad comes home from work irritated too, and all this happens in the same apartment. Shocked, the parents stare at their daughter. Perhaps after this vivid scene, the family squabbles would have died down, but the restless Molly decided to add fuel to the fading fire of scandal. "Nancy, I think your husband owes Jack a lightning bolt. I certainly don't owe you anything. Dear Molly, and Nancy, it's about time you got your head on straight. Sometimes it seems to me that you're mother between us in bed for the night." Kelly laughed out loud. The girl must have envisioned this entertaining picture. Nancy took umbrage at the crude comparison. "Jack, what are you saying in front of a child? And anyway, how can you let that happen to my mom? Nancy Kelly knows more than we do. And you still think she's a child? And Molly is being rude. Ever since she's been in our apartment, we've had daily scandals. Can't you see that your mother is a gifted provocateur? I remember she asked to stay for a week, but she's been in our apartment forever." This path of speech caused a wave of indignation. Jack stood surrounded by 3 women of different ages and marveled at their resemblance to the Huskies, who during his service in the Navy sometimes made him happy, but more often poisoned his life with their antics. He involuntarily blurted out, "Seagulls," and Molly Teatromaya rolled her eyes, imitating fainting. The old lady precisely calculated the place of the fall and landed neatly on the soft sofa. Jack was parsing something inside because he felt no sympathy for the helpless woman. He commented gloatingly, "Good luck parking the car. Grandma did the trick well. and Molly said Nancy Kelly in a loud voice. "I must be dying. Call an ambulance," with the same old gloating. Jack corrected actress ambulance call. "They're calling for a visit." Nancy screamed hysterically. "Jack, this is getting out of hand. Stop messing with my mom, and she's allowed to mess with me. Nancy, we have to do something if you want to keep this family together. Think about it." While his wife frantically dialed the ambulance, Jack pulled on his jacket and sprinted out of the apartment. Half an hour later, he was already at Rick's. The atmosphere in the other's house was peaceful. The men settled in the kitchen, and Cindy, Rick's wife, set the table in a few minutes. "Jack, you must be hungry. Would you like some borscht?" "I'd love some borscht." Ever since Molly moved into my apartment, I've forgotten the taste of normal food. She's been feeding everyone grass. One morning, I wanted to fry some eggs. My beloved Molly almost fainted. She screamed like a madwoman. "Jack, eggs are pure cholesterol." Kaz laughed. "I can't even imagine what pure cholesterol looks like. I don't envy you, bro. I'd probably run away from a woman like that to the North Pole a long time ago. In Rick, that woman could find me underground." Cindy did not interfere in the men's conversation. When the table was completely from the servers to the meal, she good-naturedly asked, "Maybe I emphasize drinking." Kaz expressively looked at her spouse Ludochka. What kind of stupid questions? You see how a man is tense. And everyone knows that a portion of a good drink, and with a small degree, is the best way to relax. The woman affectionately stroked her husband on the shoulder. "You only observe the measure. I jack on style in the living room, and you can sit at least until the morning." After a hearty dinner, Jack's heart felt warmer. "I envy you, Rick. Your wife's a gold mine." My Nancy's always looking at her mother's mouth. 17 years, and she's not used to making her own decisions. Whatever Molly says, she does. Have you tried talking to your wife? Seriously? I have. But it's no use. She always blames me for everything. It used to be more or less tolerable when Nancy was working. Why isn't she working? Would you believe it? Molly once said that a decent businessman's wife should be a homemaker. It disappeared into production. My Nancy never made it past college. Worked in a factory for a few years. That makes 3 women on your shoulders. That's right, Rick. You don't know what their needs are, do you? My business is a big word for it. I don't have a salon, just a small workshop. Of course, they're not poor, but they don't have a lot of money. After sweet Molly fell on my head, it's like I'm screaming bloody hell. I don't know what to advise you, friend. But this Gordian knot needs to be cut. One of my clients almost died because of a family emergency. And you know what I find strangest about women's logic? Is that most women see their husbands as a constant. They somehow think that it's enough to drag a man to the registry office and all can live happily ever after. And every day makes new demands. In this case, their own shortcomings they do not see, and the husband nod for the slightest misstep. Don't generalize. Your Cindy is an example of a good wife, a friend, and proudly noted yes. So I'm in the 24/7 mode of preventive work. But all kidding aside, my wife is a real diamond. Phew, I'm afraid to jinx it. The man's a fool knocking on the wooden Capitol. Jack, in any case, you can count on me. My house is always open to friends. By the way, have you seen Sam lately? Not since our fishing trip together. Is he in trouble? Sort of. Last week, a mutual acquaintance. He comes to my office a lot for treatments, said Sam's got some family drama. His wife ran out on him. How everyone's life depends on those around Sam and the nasty ones. But pity him. Feel sorry for yourself. Sam, it's really disgusting. Imagine he wrote a report on his wife, as if she was engaged in dark deeds, and took a few lambs with him. Now the girl is wanted. A real bastard. They were living together after all. We don't know why the unfortunate woman took such a step. For the first time in months, Jack slept well. In the morning, he thanked his hospitable hosts and went to work. Just before lunch, the man felt incomprehensible, sick, and dizzy. He attributed his indisposition to the portion of strong drink he had taken the day before. Almost 40 years Jack lived in this world, but never thought that just one day his life could change dramatically. When bouts of weakness began to recur with persistent regularity, He remembered about the doctor's advice, but to visit the doctor first prevented business, and then fear. The man tried to find 1,000 reasons, which could be attributed to the deterioration of health. At the top of the list was a family melodrama that had been going on for over a year, with Molly as the main character. The saddest part was that in a relatively short time, Molly had made Jack feel like a complete stranger in the apartment his parents had given them for his wedding to Nancy. His wife's mother then had limited herself to a food processor. She had declared that her Nancy was a wonderful gift in itself. More recently, Jack learned quite by accident that Molly was selling her apartment. He decided to act tough and determined. Returning home, ignoring Molly's unhappy shouts, he walked straight in his street shoes into the kitchen where she was preparing her traditional brew. "And Molly, I just heard that you put your apartment up for sale. Can you please explain what that means?" She had a hunch and went on the attack. "That I will speak as I please in my own house. And I demand to know why you suddenly decided to sell your apartment." The woman slapped the blackboard section with irritation. "What kind of interrogation is this? My apartment, and I can do whatever I want with it." "Molly, I have to inform you that you have been living in my own apartment for more than a year without registration. Don't you find that odd?" The woman almost choked with indignation. She screamed, "Nancy, your husband is throwing me out on the street." Nancy rushed to her mother's call, followed by Kelly. "People, please calm down, honestly. I'll soon get out of this madhouse." Dad said something to Grandma again. Jack tried his best to stay calm. "It was nothing. I just reminded your grandmother that she is living without registration in the apartment, the owner of which is me. And that's a gross violation." The wife and daughter froze in amazement, and Molly in between was already reporting heart drops. Kelly was the first to come to her senses. "Daddy, are you trying to evict us?" Jack felt the spiral of patience shrinking sharply. "Why can't you hear me? Why do I feel like I'm not wanted here? I'm not going to kick anyone out of here, but I'm asking you to hear me." "Dad, don't yell. See, Grandma's sick again. And your grandmother feels so bad here. Why doesn't she move out? Why does that woman poison my life day after day? Nancy, I'd forgotten I had a wife in the full sense of the word. We're all like individuals in this apartment who hate each other." Jack wanted to say many more things to these women, but suddenly their faces distorted and began to settle sounds, also became somehow distant. Kelly screamed, "Mom, Grandma, what's wrong with Dad?" There was terror in the teenager's voice. The man tried to take a step toward his daughter to hug her, but Peloso swayed beneath his feet, and then everything went black. He woke up to a bright light on the sterile sickness of the surrounding space. The man realized that he was in a hospital. A girl in a white coat and the same dazzling cap was clapping beside him. He whispered how much white there was here. The girl was wearing a mask, but by the changed shaft of her face, Jack realized that she was smiling. "Rick Anatolievich, our patient woke up." Jack barely acknowledged them, bending his friend's doctor over him. Rick checked his pulse first, and the touch of his steady hand on his heart felt a little lighter. This is what Jack's neglect of his own health leads to. "I told you to get checked out over a year ago. And here's the result of your negligence in a pre-infarction state. Yeah, it's nothing. You know me, I'm tough. That's a long story. But since you're in my hands, you can't get out of it. I've already ordered a full workup. It's unnecessary. You'll be fine. Patient." We don't allow patients to discuss their appointments. For the next few days, the medics came to the room with all sorts of clever gadgets. Some drew blood, others attached wires to his body and measured things. Then he was wheeled on a gurney down a long corridor, even though his heart sank into his heels. Jack joked, "I hope you're not taking me to the morgue." Orderly didn't get the joke. "Just an MRI for now. The doctor gave you this state-of-the-art machine. It'll detect any disease." Rick came into the room that evening. He was without a mask, so Jack immediately noticed that his friend was very puzzled. The doctor picked up words for a while, and the pause was clearly prolonged. "Rick Anatomy, tell it like it is." "Okay, I'll tell you to be honest. I didn't expect it to be this serious myself. Let's keep it short. Something's come up on my light. Unfortunately, it's pretty bad. You have cancer. Stage 3 with progression to Stage 4. One thing that's encouraging is that the metastasis is only localized in a few places. So with adequate treatment, you'll live. Thank you. That's reassuring. You don't have to go any further. Rick, I get it. It's a scary diagnosis. It was like a slab of concrete was crushing Jack. He couldn't get his thoughts together. Rick perfectly understood the state of his friend, because he had more than once had to inform the sick and their relatives that their life's journey would soon be over. But this was a best friend, and his pain for the doctor was especially close. You are premature, don't panic. There are many instances of Rick that you don't have to. I'm a man, not some blotter. Don't feel sorry for me. All right, I hear you. Are you going to tell your family, or should I? I'll do it. Nancy did not show up at the hospital until the end of the week. You could see from her demeanor that she was worried about something. They told me you were feeling better. The man cheerfully replied, yes, I'll be running soon. How's that going? Kelly's very worried about you. They wouldn't let her in the room. They said you shouldn't worry. Your daughter sends her love to you. Thank her for me too. Hi there. How's my darling Molly? She's still with us. The wife's mood changed dramatically for a moment. Jack felt like spikes had popped out of her body. Jack, what kind of stupid questions are these? Where to go? You can't put your own mother out on the street. If memory serves me correctly, Molly has another son. But Pasha can't take his mom in. His wife is like a gorgon, and I'm your kindest Leopold the cat. You know, I still had hope that we could get back to a normal family life, but Nancy interrupted him with irritation. Jack, it's up to you. You see my mom as the enemy. She only wants what's best for us. Nancy, it's not customary to shout good things here. I won't bring it up again. But I can't go on living like this either. All the more so, circumstances have appeared that change everything radically. The woman became alert, and invisible thorns were already ready to descend into the sick body of her husband. What are you saying? Are you going to divorce me? That's funny to hear. What circumstances could you possibly have? Just a little heart attack. But it's your own fault. But my mom's still recovering from it. You think that's funny? Go on, I can see it's useless to talk to you. I'm very tired. Jack closed his eyes, letting his wife know that the conversation is over. After being discharged from the hospital, Jack went straight to Rick. Smiling through the force, he asked, "Don't race." Rick even took offense. "Don't be silly." Cindy also came out into the hallway to greet her guest. Jack, we are always happy to help you, so you can stay with us as long as you need. Thank you, friends. I never thought that, being in such an unusual position, I would be forced to find a corner. All because of my wife's mother. I think she put this terrible disease on me too. Rick became wary. What do you mean? What disease? Did Cindy start pushing men around? The hallway is no place for serious talk. All the more reason not to let our twins absorb information that is incomprehensible for their young age. Rick nodded in agreement. My wife is right, as always. Our bullies have their ears to the ground. Like my grandfather used to say, let's go, while they might miss their glasses. Cindy gave her husband a menacing look. All you have on your mind is booze. The man has a heart condition, and you're offering him this? Come in, Jack. I'll give you something to eat, because you've lost weight. Jack ate borscht and cutlets with pleasure, and Rick was waiting to satisfy his hunger when he put the plate aside. The master made an expressive sign to his wife. Cindy, go and see the boys. But Jack stopped him. I wished Cindy knew about my problem too. Women in these matters understand much more than us men. Maybe your wife can advise you. What should I do? What about yours? I haven't said anything to mine. My Nancy is only interested in her mom. I really think Molly has some kind of damn power. There was so much resentment and bitterness in the man's voice that the couple physically felt his pain. Jack spoke briefly about his distress. The couple remained silent. To ease the awkwardness, Jack tried to make a joke. That's what kitten pies are like. Don't think about it. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to fight for every day and every breath. Kaz is revitalized. That's right. Remember the last time we went fishing? Rick told you about the miraculous rescue of his patient. Yeah, I remember that one. I've heard stories like that before. Our men in the shop love to tell stories about anything. Basically, that's all I have left. There are no others. Didn't Rick offer you anything? Why would he offer me hospice? But you know what that means, don't you? If I'm going to die, I'd rather die at home. And Nancy, how did she feel about it? You know, friends, I've just remembered an inheritance I can't get rid of. I got this little house, but I don't know if it's still standing or if it's falling apart. And it's in the middle of nowhere. Even more, I will say, in the neighboring state. Not far from Smolensk, there is such an abandoned village, Solyanka. My father came from there. And when I was a kid, my grandparents used to spend vacations there. Imagine, I even had a girlfriend there. I used to take my young one to her and read poems to her. Good girl Cindy, why is she good? Cindy smiled. These lines were written by Yaroslav Smelchikov, such simple, such heartfelt poems. And to me, my junk, he only gave me flowers, which he plucked from the flower bed. Rick shouted a funny grimace, Jack. And what's the matter with this girl? With such a beautiful name? I have no idea. My elders died the same year, and I had them at home afterward with my father. For a few years, he and my mother spent summers there, even grew something. I didn't have time for that. I studied at the Navy and then got married. Then my father was gone too. So maybe he's not even home, he's still standing. At least it was 2 years ago. I had to go there at the request of the local authorities. They wanted to demolish the 3 grandmothers in Solyanka as ownerless buildings. Yes, one grandfather is left. It used to be a big village. Cindy listened attentively to Jack's story, and then suddenly slapped herself on the forehead with the palm of her hand. Jack. The strange name of the village Solyanka seemed familiar to me at once. Now I remembered there is somewhere nearby. I'll look for. I have written down a woman lives one lives either a nun or a hermit. She cures people and her grandmother or mother. And I certainly do not know. A rooster, and was it to me a woman one at work told her aunt in Smolensk lives. She was treated at this witch doctor from cirrhosis of the liver. Rick looked at his wife with surprise. I did not think that in such a serious institution, where you work, in the state there are, drinking employees. After all, cirrhosis is a disease of drinkers, if I'm not mistaken. My husband's favorite topic. Cindy looked condescendingly at her spouse. For your information, you don't have to drink a lot to get cirrhosis. My coworker had some very severe hepatitis at first, and then this diagnosis came out. Jack asked, and how did it help? I think it did. Since the person is working and not complaining about health anymore. The guest thought for a moment. That's an interesting coincidence. That friend of mine seemed to have a grandmother who was also a rooster. She saved me once. Wiener laughed. I remember you telling me how you got a scumbag full on a bet. Cindy was surprised. It's true, Jack. Unfortunately, we all do rash things when we're young. I had a sin like that, and though I got hurt, I proved to the local boys that I wasn't weak. True, my grandparents almost went crazy. It's a long way to town. The paramedic station's been on lockdown for a long time. And now my grandson's dying. But that old guard gave me some brew to drink, and I recovered quickly. I saw a picture of these mushrooms later. I don't remember the name, but they're among the most poisonous. The men left the house together in the morning. Rick worked part-time as a massage therapist at several places and was afraid of being late. When they got into the car, he took off abruptly. The speedometer sped up. You know, man, I'm so used to living the high life, my biggest fear is losing my job. That's right, you get used to the good stuff. I, too, used to spend all day and night in the shop for Nancy and Kelly's well-being. Even though it's a modest business, it's a steady income. And now it turns out nobody wants me when I'm sick. It's a shame and a disappointment. I understand. But don't write yourself off prematurely. What if alternative medicine helps you? I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. Rick gave Jack a ride home. See you later, hobo. Rick, wait a minute. Listen, do you mind if I put you in charge of my workshop for a while? If I go away, I'll need someone to keep an eye on it. In principle, I don't mind. Then I'll stop by the lawyer's office. And I'll sign over the new car to you too. That Molly, is she thinking about what kind of mean thing to do to me? Jack, I don't like this conversation. It's like you're making a will. In my situation, it's a perfectly normal decision. Who knows how much time I have left? Rick's about to go into strict labor. Stop whining. Jack stood outside his driveway for a long time yet, hesitating to go up to the 5th floor. There was no telling how long he would have stayed in this uncertain state if it hadn't been for Kelly. The daughter from afar noticed her father and rushed to his neck. "Daddy, you're all right. I'm so glad you've been discharged." Jack didn't tell her he'd been discharged from the hospital yesterday. Nor did he tell her about his serious illness. Nancy was not expecting her husband to return. She looked at him as if she was seeing him for the first time. Perhaps out of confusion, she made a ridiculous suggestion. "Come in, now that you're here. Amazing things happen." "Nancy, am I knocking on someone else's door?" "Why are you greeting me like a stranger?" The woman sluggishly said, "I'm sorry. I really said something ridiculous. I'm just confused. My mom was admitted to the hospital the day before yesterday. I'm so worried." Nancy cried. Jack looked at her and couldn't understand why he was listening to all this. The resentment came in bitter again. Whose throat? "You weren't so worried about me. Apparently, I became an extra person in your life. I even forgot when you kissed me. I've forgotten what your hair smells like." The woman tried to smile again. She didn't do it well. "Jack, honestly, I'm really glad you're okay, but you have to understand me." "Nancy, I understand you perfectly well. Let's not talk about illness anymore. And your mom. I think we really need to think about how to get on with our lives." He went into the back room where he'd made himself a place to live. "Molly." "Jack, where are you going?" "This is Mom's room. It's my room now." Jack said it in such a tone that Nancy was afraid to contradict him, but she was very afraid of being alone. There was a knock on the door. The woman shouted in desperation, "Jack, can you hear me? I won't let you divorce me as I'll be alone with a baby in my arms. From behind the door, you're going to work. I'm taking care of my only daughter, and Kelly is an adult, so don't exaggerate your helplessness." For a few days, the house was completely quiet. Kelly ran off to school in the morning, and Nancy hurried to her sick mother's house. Through acquaintances, she placed Molly for treatment in a cardiac center. The woman was recovering in a ward for special patients. And her company was the same dissatisfied with life and son-in-law lady. In their free time from treatment, the women watched soap operas. But during the visit of relatives, both masters portrayed themselves as terminally ill matrons. About the peculiarities of the treatment, Molly Jack in pictures told the daughter, "Daddy, you have no idea how ridiculous and even funny it looks from the outside." I became so embarrassed for Grandma's behavior that I decided to temporarily refrain from dating her. "How did your mom react to that?" "She didn't." "You know, Dad, you may think it's a fantasy, but Mom's acting like a hypnotist. She's never been like this before. Maybe she should see a doctor too." Jack laughed. "Is it really all in your head? It's just that your mom is not an independent person. Grandma, on the other hand, has a hypertrophied self-confidence. Hence all the problems. You made it so easy for me. Why doesn't my mom want to understand that? How am I supposed to know what's on your mom's mind?" Kelly looked at her father with a kind of hidden desperation. "Kitten, something else is bothering you." The girl tried to be calm, but her voice trembled. "Mommy said you're going to leave us. It's true. Not my daughter. Your mom has turned everything inside out. The fate of our family depends on her. But anyway, you're my favorite child, and I'll never leave you." The girl silently nestled against her father's chest, and he was afraid to move, so as not to accidentally break this invisible thread that connected the two soulmates. "Perhaps, my daughter, I'll be leaving soon. But it won't be for long. It has to be. When it's over, I'll tell you why I'm leaving. But I can't right now. And please don't say anything to Mom and Grandma. Dad, you know me. Besides, Mom's not interested in anything right now. She even pays less attention to me. But I kind of like it." Jack took 2 days to sort out all the legal issues and say goodbye to his friends. Rick reluctantly picked up the paperwork. "I don't like this whole thing. It's kind of hard on my soul." "Jack, maybe this whole Rick thing was for nothing. But you said yourself the witch doctor was my only hope. That's not what I meant. It's about these documents. It's not good. It's like we're saying goodbye forever. Alex looked at his comrade strangely. Who knows? Maybe so. I didn't come to my senses right away and tried to cover it up. Nonsense. What's going through my head? Never mind. When are you going to hit the road? Molly will probably be discharged tomorrow soon. I want to be gone before then. Listen to you, how does a good detective story unfold? A little bit. Okay. I hope to see you again. Rick went out into the hallway to escort his guest out. Jack asked him, "How's Sam doing over there? Did he find his runaway wife?" "No, but I think he's getting over it. Saw him with such an interesting lady the other day." You could tell by the glistening man's finger that Sam was a wealthy girl. You don't say. I had the good fortune to see his wife, a very pleasant person, and without any nonsense. She has a strange alias with the letter L. By the expression of the guilty face, it was easy to guess that his brain went into extreme modes of operation. Jack reassured her friend. Okay, without straining your meanderings, you'll remember later. Especially now, having this woman is irrelevant. Look, Jack, if you want to take my car, it's out of the goodness of my heart. Don't. Me and my guys built an old series Lada out of junk. But it drives fine without you. I'll take it. A day later, Jack was on his way to a new life. He drove leisurely along the highway, towards Minsk, enjoying the feeling of complete freedom. Weaknesses, unpleasant dizziness, which tormented the man in the last few weeks, disappeared without a trace. But there was a youthful delight in his heart. Jack muttered aloud, "It's been a long time since I've been so satisfied with life, as if I'd been born again." Cool foreign cars rushed by. There were even modest Zhiguli of different modifications. This road variety also pleased the experienced motorist. But the real pleasure was his own car. That's why all along the way he was constantly encouraging his faithful horse. "Good boy. You're my best. Let them look at us and envy us. How can this imported garbage compare to you? Any off-road motor won't fall apart for parts on the first bump." Jack had never before observed the manner of talking without the presence of a live interlocutor. It was a defect Rick had suffered from, and Rick had once told him that it was a clear sign of disorder. Venica was very frightened. The whole company laughed heartily at his comrade. But Jack did not consider his behavior on the road unnatural. After all, the car for him has always been a living object. He often reminded his employees of this. A man's car is almost as much a creature as a cat or a dog. It remembers how the owner takes care of it, what words he encourages it with, and the careless owner is always punished by refusal to work. All people with a healthy sense of humor worked in the workshop. One such wit continued the theme. "That's a good one, Jack, right to the heart. It's a bomb. I can just picture myself walking up to my convertible a little tipsy. And he not so beautiful baritone just poked the keys on the hood. Where you bastard climb behind the wheel." Other comrades also joined the discussion. If the car is almost a living organism, I wonder how it perceives the mats. You've been told you'll get a breakdown for anything bad. As soon as you use a foul word, a part goes flying. Listen, if it was really so, all Russian roads were full of spare parts, and a car in full configuration, and on the move would be a rarity. Jack warmly remembered now when it was possible to laugh and grieve. He started his business practically from scratch, and over the years he managed to accumulate a friendly team of real specialists. Thanks to their, you could say, jewelry craftsmanship. And the car was assembled, on which he was now heading to a remote village. The man did not have time to finish this pleasant thought as the same old Lada swept past. Even the color matched, only a couple of tones lighter. An exclamation of admiration burst out of my heart. Such coincidences happen. It was interesting to know the history of this car. About an hour after the surprising meeting with the double, Jack was already at the terminus of his route. The village was a depressing sight, with dilapidated houses and gaping eye sockets of broken windows everywhere. Many of the buildings were drowned in thickets of weeds. The gruesome scenery made me feel a little creepy. There were survivors here. Surprisingly, dogs actively responded to his call. And they did not wait for a special invitation, and all of them showed up on the only road that divided the village into two parts. The animals were very friendly, as their tales told. Their appearance suggested that their food was not bad, but there was an eagerness in the eyes of the furry creatures to swallow something tasty. Jack took out his travel ration from the glove compartment and carefully arranged the remaining sausage sandwiches on the bag. And children, brothers, treats here a blue company of 4 participants of an incomprehensible suit hurriedly went to the table. But no sooner had the poor fellows tasted the treat. As if from under the ground, a little grandmother appeared right on the road. Her appearance was so unexpected that Jack's heart gave an unpleasant twinge. Ignoring the man, the old woman pounced on the dogs. "Ah, you beggars, get out of here. Aren't you ashamed of yourselves? I'm feeding you like slaughtering bandits." Grandmother, in her fiery speech, used many other words that Jack had never heard, but her vivid monologue in some obscure dialect made a strong impression on the dogs. They lowered their ears and lowered their eyes, and some even bent in envy. One doggy decided to trick the mistress and came in from the rear in order to grab the treat unnoticed. But the vigilant old lady immediately stopped this attempt. Palm went away. "I told you how many times not to take food from strangers." The woman glanced expressively at Jack. He laughed heartily. "Hello. Don't worry, I won't cause your dogs a knot." Grandma dignifiedly adjusted her jacket. "Who knows you? What's on your mind?" Last year, too, people drove by and gave the dogs something spoiled. They suffered so much. The mother died in terrible agony, and they couldn't have been saved. "Nasha, Jack is alert. Pardon me, what is your name?" The old woman paused and adjusted the colors of her headscarf. "Miranda. I'm the 3 of us left here. I'm Miranda, and Grandpa Plato. He's got his little house up there on the hill. The whole village is dead, and you'll be a nice man." Salenko stared intently into Jack's face, and her small eyes, like an X-ray, shone through him. The man felt uncomfortable. "Maybe you remember the old people. They lived there under Gorky, too." "How could I not remember? I remember they died the same year. They were good people for so long. You wouldn't happen to be their son." "You guessed it. I'm the oldest. I remember your name now, Jack. You guessed it. You got it, Grandma. My granddaughter came by and said I had some kind of Alzheimer's disease that kills your memory. Your granddaughter must be mistaken because I haven't been here in a while. A couple years ago, but I haven't seen you. That's not surprising. We're used to being in holes around here. The only time we come out is for the bench. She comes twice a week." The old woman spoke passionately about life in the empty village, and the narrative was so false that anyone would have thought there were at least 100 people living in the village. Miranda escorted Jack to his heritage estate, which was also drowning in a thicket of weeds. It took the man 5 minutes to survey the house and the surrounding area. What surprised him was that the house was in order, and even the refrigerator was immediately sound. As soon as he plugged the plug into the socket. Until late in the evening, he cleaned up the property. He had to fight the overgrowth the grandfather's way, but his hands remembered how to hold the scythe, and soon the air was filled with the pleasant aroma of fresh, dull grass. Jack sat down on a small bench to take a break. But no sooner had he caught his breath than Miranda appeared on the horizon. The old woman and her faithful guards were followed by dogs. The woman addressed him simply, as if they saw each other every day. "Listen, Nancy, here's the thing." The grandmother hesitated. Jack realized she was embarrassed to ask him anything. "I see you've got some serious business to attend to. Don't be shy. I'm not a stranger to you." The woman was pleased and began to enthusiastically state the essence of the case. "I've been watching you. You've got a knack for it. Maybe you won't refuse me and old women to put the yard in order, because we have grown up. We're all up to our necks in here. Sure, I'd love to take charge of everyone who lives here. Not all at once, but gradually. I'll come by tomorrow morning." As I was falling asleep, Jack thought life was a very strange thing. And no matter how much you plan it, it still gives you an unexpected surprise. Sinking into a pleasant sleep, the man did not know what gift fate had prepared for his family. Kelly was staring blankly at the TV screen and suddenly screamed, "Mommy, Mommy." Hurry up and go." Nancy came running to her daughter's call and was stunned. The announcer was recounting the incidents, and the screen flashed with images that made her heart sink. The same car, Jack. "Mom, could this be a mistake?" "See, it's all burned up." "No, Kelly, that's Daddy's car. I recognized the color. And there are only a handful of vintage cars like that these days." Molly was also interested in what was going on in the apartment. "What's all the commotion?" "Girls?" Nancy collapsed on the couch and sobbed. Kelly was crying too. "Grandma, I think we've had an accident. It was on TV. Daddy must have crashed." The girl couldn't talk anymore. And only Grandma didn't shed even a tear with undisguised sneer. She gave up. To each his own. Mother and daughter watched another newscast. The announcer asked for anyone who knew the car or its owner. Nancy immediately dialed the phone number that flashed on the ticker. Kelly was still hoping that everything would turn out all right and that the accident had nothing to do with her father. But Nancy came back from the identification procedure, and from her face, the girl realized that there were no miracles in the world. Kelly is Daddy, face and all. He's badly burned. But it's definitely him we need to let his friends know. The figure of Molly appeared in the doorway. "Nancy, you may take offense at me, but I don't think there's any need to spend a lot of money on a wake. We can limit ourselves to a modest meal." Nancy looked at her mother with a wild look. "Mother, I sometimes get the impression that you have no heart at all. Do you realize that your granddaughter's father and my husband died tragically? I know you didn't love Jack. You can't stomp on a memory like that. If only out of respect for Kelly and me. I'd rather you didn't say anything." And Molly pressed her lips together resentfully and disappeared into the kitchen. Jack couldn't have dreamed this. He didn't realize that while he was helping the old folks in weed control in another part of the world, his funeral was taking place. The man enjoyed the new experiences and the vastness of the fields. Simple farm work complemented him, weakened by a terrible disease of the body with energy. Why did the urge to live become stronger? Restless old Miranda watched him work, and from her expression from his wrinkled face, it was evident that it gave her great pleasure. "Nancy, you should take a break to drink some fresh milk. Just given to my daughter." The man carefully set the scythe down and picked up the clay jug. He drank the milk in one gulp and wiped himself rustically with his shirt sleeve. "Thank you, Miranda. Your milk is excellent. Come on, Nancy, goat's milk. It cures all sorts of diseases. I drink a white check every day." "Why?" Miranda gave Jack a condescending look. "It's a lot of trouble with you city folk. This jug is called Uglich in our village. If you're going to live here, memorize it. I'll keep everything in mind. Then again, we have our own laws. I can't believe this is happening to me. I think I'm just dreaming. And when I wake up, none of this will be there. Who comes here? Everyone says it's a special place here. When I was young, old people used to say that all sorts of miracles happen here. Even any blade of grass has a special power. My grandmother told me about it too. Tell me, do you remember the dumb ones that lived behind that leaf? How not to remember to Zakharov? Not all ran with different thieves. After the war, they lived in dugouts because there was devastation all around, so everyone was sick. There were not enough doctors. Zakharovna saved us. People said that even the old paramedic consulted her. And remember, she had a granddaughter, Miranda, but she was staring at a man. As it was. Cindy is still in good health and getting better. She was going somewhere in the city. They say she was married to an oligarch and then ran away from him. He must have hit her hard. I can't say for sure, but women don't run away from normal men. I know that for myself. Jack felt that now the grandmother would begin to tell him the story of her love, which she had managed to share yesterday. To avoid a second take, he asked a cautionary question. And where is that line now? What is it doing? Miranda Na again cast Jack an incredulous look. You're like that TV show guest 3 times here. She only took a different name. Probably so the oligarch won't find her. People call her that. She lives in Babkina's house, and she walks through the surrounding woods, gathering herbs. The old woman looked around as if someone could hear her and whispered. When our women came to that shop, they said that this lore is not all at home. Miranda, but for convincing, turned her index finger at her temple and giggled softly into her fist. "Look, Nancy, why do you keep asking?" "Do I mean our crust? What do you need it for?" The man answered evasively, "Perhaps I'll tell you all about it later." "Are you sick, my dear?" The old woman frowned and covered her mouth with her hand. "And I'm an old fool. I didn't realize it at once. I didn't like the way you looked yesterday. You must go to the river. People say it has a terrible power to cure and heal, and makes conspiracies. She's helped a lot of people. Even people from the capital came to her for treatment. That's the turnaround." That afternoon, Jack headed towards the forest, where Miranda Nay pointed him. "Through the woods, shorter, it will be 1.5 kilometers. As you come to the clearing, turn right and ideas until you see. It's an old cemetery. There's Zakharov's house nearby. There's no way to pass it." Despite the fact that the route was unfamiliar to him, because in the distant childhood they were afraid to walk through the forest, Jack traveled the whole way in less than an hour. He had almost forgotten about his terrible diagnosis. He greedily absorbed the fresh air, soaked with the smell of pine. He also found the house of Znakar without difficulty, but the man was surprised when he noticed 2 parked cars nearby. It turns out that even today there are queues. On the bench were waiting 2 women and a young girl, whose outfit was not difficult to guess that she was a city dweller. Jack came closer. "Who's last here?" One of the women looked at him sternly. "Keep your voice down. Laura doesn't like noise. It interferes with her work." Jack sat down on a vacant corner of the bench. "Do you come here often?" One has to hope that the witch doctor will help. It was clear from the woman's mood that she was not inclined to continue the conversation. Jack also silently waited for his turn. Time stretched so slowly that for a moment it seemed to the man that, passing through the forest, he had fallen into a parallel dimension. He liked this thought so much that he began to develop it. His imagination immediately responded to this message and began to throw up incredible pictures of possible variants. Some of the plots were so ridiculous that Jack could not help laughing. The woman again cast a disgruntled glance in his direction. The man apologized. "I apologize. I forgot myself. A long time ago when I was a child, I used to come here. My grandmother, the current witch doctor, used to cure me. This news made a strong impression on my neighbor on the waiting bench. And I thought you thought right the first time. After all, my last experience of contact with a witch doctor happened more than 20 years ago. I'll be honest, I didn't believe in the whole thing. I'm sorry, I don't want to use bad words. In short, I didn't. Then why did you come here? You can't do anything here without faith. It won't work. You didn't listen to me. It just so happens that there are no other options. No wonder everyone comes here with one last hope. I didn't believe either, but now this ray is the only thing that gives me the strength to fight for life." The woman's voice trembled, and Jack realized that further questioning was inappropriate. He sank back into silence, and time began to die out drop by drop. The sun was about to hide behind the horizon, when the woman, with whom Jack had managed to talk a little, came out of the witch doctor's office. "Come in." No sooner had Jack crossed the threshold of the house than he heard the voice of the landlady. "I knew you would come today." The man froze in place. His condition could not be called shock. It was something like a stupor mixed with a powerful electric shock, so for a while he was unable to move or speak. The healer looked at him and smiled. "I didn't expect that. Did you even recognize me?" Little by little, the stupor began to subside. "I knew it was you, but I didn't expect our meeting to be like this." The man looked at this beautiful woman, who didn't have a single drop of makeup on her face. The blonde braids only emphasized the natural attractiveness of the hostess more. "What did you imagine our meeting to be like? After all, just a week ago, you didn't even think you'd come here to seek my help. Am I wrong?" Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The evening gloom was creeping into the house through the windows, and it was creepy. That's right. This trip wasn't part of my plans, but my friend's wife had suggested that this was the place that could help me. I didn't even realize that sweet little Cindy girl from way back in my youth. That's you. You're upset about that. No, I'm not. On the contrary, I don't know why, But all these days I've been here, I've had a kind of adolescent excitement in my heart. I've developed such an insatiable thirst for life that I can't even put it into words. That's good. Is nature itself helping you? I used to feel the same way. I was suffocating in the city, and then I realized that I had to come back here to my roots. They stared into each other's eyes for a long time, each experiencing the meeting in his own way. But both realized that it was no accident, that fate had brought them together again. The first one interrupted the long pause. Persevere, I'll try to help you. There's still more to come. It was almost night when Jack returned to his hermit's dwelling. He went over the memory of the encounter minute by minute, and the image of the healer haunted him. All the following days, 3 days later, she appeared on his doorstep. Hello, he was confused. Miranda had assured him that she almost never left her dwelling and certainly never came to the sick herself. Apparently she'd gotten it right. His gaze and smiled gently. I came to you as Cindy. Jack exhaled. Come over, I'll make some tea now. Cindy looked around, Jack, suddenly frozen. She used to come here a lot, and it was so natural. Nothing had changed much. He turned to her, so the house had stood for so long. Everything that was still the same. He poured tea, sat down in front of her. Cindy, why have you come back? The woman twirled the glass of tea in her hands. You wouldn't think it. I'm really interested. I honestly never thought I'd meet you here specifically. She grinned. You know, when I realized that my grandmother's gift had passed to me, I was really scared. So much so that I decided never to tell anyone about it. I got married. Admittedly, the fact that it was a mistake, I realized immediately. But I decided that everyone lives like that, everyone tries. Anyway, I spent many years with a man and only then realized that he was just using me. I did not even notice how my abilities were put on the business stream. Only when I realized all this and decided to leave did I find out what kind of person my husband really was. What was it? Did he say goodbye to you? He reported me to the police as if I'd taken money from him. Jack choked. What, Cindy? I'm sorry, of course, but isn't it Sam? Your husband's name. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. I wondered what you were getting out of you. Are you too close? Not really. We've been going fishing for years. On the last day of summer, she sighed sadly. Cindy, and I'm shocked, of course. But believe me, my friends and I don't approve of Sam's actions at all. It's all in the past. Tell me, Jack, what's wrong with your house? What's the thing that put a hole in your defenses and allowed the disease to grow so fast? I don't know. Well, unless it's my wife's mother. Cindy looked at him thoughtfully. Perhaps. She sat for a moment longer, then stood up. Jack jumped up too. He was so reluctant for her to leave. Cindy smiled. Tomorrow you'll move in with me for a week, and then we'll see. Rick just couldn't find a place to be. He didn't know what he should do. The first night Jack had left, his car had just been stolen. He only found out himself on the morning news. He couldn't believe it. He ran outside and the car was gone. He came home. Jack was presumed dead by all accounts. There was no way to call him. When his friend left, he turned off his phone and just put it in front of her. If I ever come back, you'll give it to me. Until then, I'll leave it here. But in Rick, I want to put all this behind me for now, you know? How do you explain going to another dimension or something? Jack lowered his head. I want to get better, and that's all I'm going to do. I don't need anything from this world. Okay, what do you say? You'll definitely get better. He hugged his friend tightly. Cindy, the wife came into the room. What were you yelling about this morning? Look. She sat down next to him and stared at the TV screen. Then she looked at him. And I don't understand. It's Jack's car. Come on, Cindy. What do we do? The car's on me. She sat there silent for a long time. Then she said, I don't think we should do anything. Let's just wait. They've got to figure it out. If they don't, maybe it's for the best. Don't think I'm being cruel, but if Jack comes back, I'll handle the situation myself. And if he doesn't, she's gone. I sat and thought for a while and decided that Cindy was right, as always. He told the police he didn't know anything. A friend had just signed the car over to him on the deed. He had to do it for something. It's been almost a month. Molly was screaming all over the apartment. "What do you mean, Nancy? It's not your workshop. It's some strange guy's. Mom's his best friend." So that's what Jack decided. That's what Jack decided. What are you gonna do? Keep your mouth shut. You realize you're gonna have to work now, support your family. Nancy grinned. But I'll feed myself somehow. I'll get an allowance for my daughter. What about me, or am I not your family anymore? Nancy wrinkled his nose tiredly. My mom is, of course. But you can take care of yourself. And Molly grabbed her heart drops. Nancy stood up, taking the vial from her. Mom, did you know that you can't take medication when you're healthy? They can backfire. And just walked off to her room, closing the door behind her. Logically, Molly knew that now she should take offense and leave. But that was logic. She didn't want to live alone. Besides, there seemed to be a buyer for her apartment and the money Molly planned to get. She was going to take a tour of the resorts, she reassured herself. She needed to see the world before she died. But she didn't tell her daughter or granddaughter about her plans. When I found out that Nancy had identified her husband, he just stood there and sat down. There was no way that could have happened. Cindy, too, looked at him with dumbfounded eyes. But as soon as Rick wanted to say something, she said, "Once again, I advise you not to change anything. Just let it go." Winnie's cell phone rang in her pocket. It was Rick. "You know already." "Yeah, maybe it's a good thing he doesn't really have a chance." "Rick, I'm sorry. I'm a doctor. I need to call Sam. He's been pretty out of the world lately." The funeral was a high-profile affair. Nancy cried, as she should. Molly fought on the sidelines. Only it was odd that Jack Kelly's daughter didn't even come to the coffin. When Rick asked her, "Kelly, why didn't you say goodbye?" She replied curtly, "Because it wasn't Daddy. I know that for a fact. Daddy's gone somewhere and he'll be back." And Rick gave her a surprised look and walked away. He only stepped back so he wouldn't say anything unnecessary. Jack opened the door of the house. For 3 months he had not been in the village. Now that he was feeling much better, he decided to return. He had made no excuse for his desire to get away from Cindy into his own home. I told him that it was indecent to use her hospitality for such a long time. I told him that Miranda was impossible. He needed help. She was old and he was a neighbor. But really the reason was the same. He realized that their relationship had first returned to the warmth that had once been between them, and then it had developed further. Jack didn't want to, or rather he wanted to, but he couldn't. He realized that he couldn't yet give the lady any of the things any man should give. And if all her treatment, and it didn't work, then what would he make her suffer? And he did not want Cindy to suffer. He really wanted her to be happy. He had just had time to melt the stove when there was already a knock at the door. Forever on guard. "Jack, you're back, aren't you?" "Oh, good." I was beginning to get scared. At first I thought it was nothing. I mean, you came in sick, but then nothing. Platten says he saw you behind the scenes, but as a colleague. Jack smiled. "Well, also became good from it. As you can see, it's all good." "Well, yes, the trail got better from this one. So what now?" "Oh, you're going." "Well, I'll stay for now." "We'll see." "Oh, sure." "What are you going to do here?" 3 old men and 5 dogs. Except Lorena. Jack glanced quickly at Miranda, but she, as if nothing had happened, continued with you eyes. "You on me, not with Camille." I've been in this world a lot of years not to recognize that kind of look. And you know what I'll tell you? No, Camille. Even the best one can't help you as much as true love. Here, Jack was confused. Did he have it all written on his forehead? Miranda's absolutely right. Right about everything. He was pulled out of his thoughts by Miranda's voice. "My bathhouse is almost ready, so in an hour Plato will come and kill a boar. The walls are fresh from the heat." She turned to go, but stopped and called Cindy. "Things won't be so boring." Jack was confused, but half an hour later was already walking at a brisk pace towards Cindy. The time was late, and there was no one at her house. She came out to meet him, and Jack, obeying what was in his soul, pressed her to him and kissed her. "Cindy, don't say anything. I know what you're thinking. And you know, I want to tell you that happiness has no time intervals. Let's just not talk about it." Jack had a hard time readjusting, but he did. Grandma Miranda and Grandpa Plato are having a bath, and you and I were invited." He was sure Cindy would say no, but she suddenly smiled. "I guess it's time to go out." We were up late. It was already dark outside when, slightly behind Kwiatkowska, Jack and Cindy went outside. "You do realize you're going to be spending the night at my place tonight?" Cindy smiled, yes. In the morning, Jack woke up thinking that he had finally given up on dying. He only now realized how much he wanted to live, so much so that his chest even ached. He leaned over Cindy and gently kissed her shoulder. She immediately woke up and announced him with her hands. "Don't go away. Cindy, listen to me. I have to go to town. I have to get a checkup. If my friend Rick tells me I'll live another year, I'll come right back for you. And if he doesn't, I'm sorry, but I don't want to be a burden." Cindy sat up in bed. "You asked me if I'd be happy to be a burden." Jack only shook his head. Cindy got dressed, stood. "You didn't see me off. I didn't need to love you for so many years. And now I realize I could lose you again. What do you think I'm going away? I'm staying in town." But Cindy was gone. She was standing in front of him. No one knows what lies ahead. She turned and walked out. Jack remained standing in the middle of the room. After a minute, it was as if from the world he stood quickly gathering his things. He would try to get back as fast as he could as soon as he could. Back on the road again, cars that were not afraid of any mishaps. It was a little dreary at heart, but Jack knew he had to. Gotta get that damn checkup. Gotta work something out with his family. He pressed the bell button. The door opened almost immediately. Rick stared at him in amazement. Then he yelled to Jack and hugged him with all his might. Jack even gasped. "What are you doing?" "What are you doing? Coming back from the dead?" "It is. Come in quick." Cindy gave him a big hug, too. "Jack, you don't know how glad I am that you're here, do you? Tomorrow is your woman's trial, or rather, your sweetheart's. Molly won't leave the workshop alone." "What does she care about the workshop?" Jack went ballistic. "It's okay that I'm still alive." Rick even seemed pleased to hear him say that. "That's right, you're alive to us." "I don't understand anything about Rick. I'll find you one right now. He was born in a laptop. He's completely lost it. He came to see his friend, you could say, from the other side of the world. And the friend didn't even ask about his health. You watch, and I'll call our people. We should celebrate. And I'll watch, of course, but don't call Sam. I'll explain why later." Rick shrugged. "You know, you're making me happy, aren't you?" Sam's gone completely off the rails. Jack overheard the wreath asking Rick to come over. Apparently he was reluctant, and then Rick said, "Do you believe in the resurrection?" "No." "Then definitely come, and as soon as possible." Jack didn't have time to ask who was resurrected, because the clip that the wreath turned on for him got to where Jack's car was being shown. What the hell was that? Rick walked over to it. The car was stolen the first night. "I didn't even know until I saw the news this morning." "Who was driving it?" "You." Jack turned to Rick in amazement. "What do you mean?" "In a very direct way. Did your wife recognize you?" Jack was silent for a while. "Now you see why Molly's so interested in the workshop." "Yeah, the situation. Kelly, I need to let her know, reassure her where my phone is." Kaz handed him the phone. "Kelly doesn't believe you're dead. She says you've been away and you'll definitely be back." Jack didn't turn the phone on. "We need to think this through first." Cindy set the table and wanted to leave. Jack looked up at her. "Cindy, please stay at my place. Anyway, I need to consult with you too." Cindy didn't even have time to answer before the doorbell rang. Rick's voice echoed throughout the apartment. "But where are the miracles in this place?" He swung open the door to the kitchen and hesitated. Stared at Jack for a long moment, then stepped forward. "You." And Rick seduced a friend just like Rick did. "What, are you two conspiring?" "You're trying to crush me." Rick pulled back a little bit. "Have you changed? The grayness is gone from your skin. Even put on a little weight." Jack laughed. "Well, try living next to Miranda and her goat." "Not that kind of frame." Rick laughed. "You should come to me tomorrow for a checkup." "I'm actually here for that." Rick turned to Rick. "Where's our other friend in Rick?" Shrugged. "Jack versus Cindy said. So let's all go to the table, at the table and talk. Jack swigged the shot of tincture. Cindy sat down and spoke. I don't know where to begin. I'll start with the most important thing. There is a witch doctor in the village, as you all know by now. Many people make the mistake of thinking it's old ladies. It's still a young, very beautiful, and very kind woman. I don't. And tried to remember what unusual name Sam's wife was called. Yeah, I really couldn't remember. Her name was Lauren. Rick wiped his eyes. That's her there, that's her. There was a pause at the table, and Cindy said thoughtfully, and I take it that the Cindy you were once in a relationship with and Lorena are the same person. Rick's eyebrows went up. That's right, Cindy. And if I understand correctly, you're in a relationship again. Yes, Cindy. And so before I decide what I'm going to do about my death, I need to decide, well, I'm going to have to take Sam out if he doesn't take a statement. He's guilty of something. You know why he's looking for her. Demkin's whole business has been going under for years, and he's been making money off his wife's skills. He's got a whole business network going. Rick took the whistle. I thought Sam was kidding when he asked me for a loan. He was so offended, he threw the phone down. Cass scratched the back of his head. The Lawrence Dink case. Your death. Look, I didn't ask the most important thing. How are you doing yourself? Jack grinned, hoping that better, as Miranda's grandmother says, love cures all. I'm going to lie down, Rick. I hope he'll be happy. They sat up until almost morning. At 500, Cindy had them on the couch. Jack fell asleep right away. We'll have to start somewhere tomorrow. Stand-up court is in session. Rick, and everyone in the courtroom stood up. Molly has the floor. I want the workshop returned to the rightful owner of my daughter. She is the heir to her husband's estate. And this man, who called himself a friend of our Alyosha, apparently took possession of it somehow and then set it all up. Rick shook his head. The judge started asking Molly questions. Then Nancy went on for about an hour. Finally, the older woman couldn't take it anymore. What kind of judge are you? You do realize that a widowed mother of a minor child has been deprived of everything. Or were you also bribed? The judge asked if anyone else had been bribed too. What do you mean who? The experts who determined that our Jack was out of control. That's enough for the court to call another witness. Molly waved her hand in frustration. The lawyer had promised her it wouldn't be a big deal. The door opened and Jack appeared in the courtroom. Nancy gasped and Molly crossed herself after answering a few questions. Jack said I would like to file for dissolution of marriage and division of property at once. Nancy jumped up. You don't know how to do this all mine. Where are we going to live? Mom has a heart condition. Immediately a man with glasses jumped up next to Nancy and began to calm her down. It was immediately obvious he wasn't just sitting next to her. Jack turned away. He wasn't going to charge Nancy with anything at this point. He was dead to her, so it was only natural. After the trial, Jack was outside waiting for his ladies. What do you think you're doing? His wife's mother was stepping on him. Molly, are you back in your apartment yet? That would be very good, because Nancy has to move in with you. And I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not going to let you divorce me. The young man who was standing next to Nancy had his face pulled. She turned toward him. That's not what I was going to say, but anyway, where we're going to live. Jack grinned. Your mom has a separate 2-bedroom. I think you'll fit in there just fine. I don't have anything. You know everything. And you pretended to be sick. We'll sue you. Rick, let me interject. The thing is, Jack is in the penultimate stages of cancer. And I was very surprised that only his daughter is visiting him in the hospital. Nancy and Molly looked at each other. And Jack could sense what the older woman was thinking. We'll just have to wait. Refugee. Well, why make hasty decisions? You have a child? There's no need to get excited. He didn't have time to answer. There was a scream. Daddy. Jack turned to see Kelly running toward them. He snapped out of his daze and rushed toward her. Daddy, I knew it. I knew it. Jack spent almost 2 weeks in the hospital. Kelly was with him every day and reported everything that was going on at home. Grandma had forgotten she had a heart condition. She's on the phone all day trying to figure things out. Mom's hardly ever home. She's always off somewhere with that one of hers. You're a duck. Well, Kelly, Mom's a young, beautiful woman. What about you, Kelly? You're an adult. You know, sometimes things happen. I remember, Dad, you used to say, well, I'll take care of you until you find a good woman. You just get better. Half an hour after my daughter left, Rick showed up in the room. He looked so confused that Jack was afraid. That things were bad. Rick looked at him. I don't know how to tell you. I've double-checked everything several times, and I don't understand anything. You got nothing at all, like you never had anything. That guy I was telling you about, he was jumping around like a marker. It's like you never had anything. No, that's just not possible. Jack sat up in bed and began to pull on his pants. Okay, Rick, thank you so much. If anything, come and visit us for a month or two. I'll be getting stronger. You know the kind of place we live in. All the old people know about it. So come on over. Now I gotta go. I need to talk to Sam. Jack, let me come with you. No, this is our case. Look, I'll be in touch if you need me. Sam's been really angry lately. It's not working out for him. What if he does something weird? Jack's up. Look, Rick, we've been friends for years. Do you really think we can't have a normal conversation? Honestly, I'm not sure. But good luck anyway. Sam met him with an exclamation of surprise. I don't get it. Have you lost your mind? No, Dim, it's everyone here who's crazy. Come on in. It's not cleaned up. My creature ran away and took the money with it. Dim, why are you saying that? Cindy didn't take anything. Your business was already going under and you were living solely on what her skills brought in. You were successfully trading on her talent. Sam turned on him. So that's it then. Where is she? What do you care? That's none of your business. She's still my wife. But that's just on paper. All right, here's the deal. Either you take back the statement, or I go to the police and tell everything as it is. Sam laughed. Who's gonna believe you? And anyway, I don't get it. You're dead. Him. Jack turned around and walked out the door and his phone rang. It was Molly. Nancy, you should come home. Molly, I will. As soon as you clear my house. Never you hear me? Never. Jack hung up the phone. He looked at his watch. In 15 minutes, they're meeting his daughter at the park. You know, it's Grandma. That Vasily who hangs around Mom all the time. He called her over and told her to give up the apartment. He called me too, told me I'd have my own room. But Grandma has nowhere to go. And she's already spent half the money, so she's fighting. Because the one Vasily said right away that Grandma should live separately, and even offered to find her a rented place. Mom, that dad mom, strangely enough, is silent. In the pocket of Jack's phone rang. It was Rick. Jack, the man tensed up. What's wrong? You know, I did a terrible, stupid thing. Alka came to see me. You remember her, maybe? Sam brought her in a couple times. She was such a girl. Well, she was crying. Her mom has cancer. She said she heard about some witch doctor. I was an idiot and told her about your miracle cure. She stopped crying right away. She took out her cell phone and called Sam. Anyway, he rushed over to the Lee. Jack jumped up. How? Jack, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how it happened. Okay, Rick, I called over there. Get the police and come with us. Yeah, I got it. We're in a hurry. Sam's not himself. I could hear him laughing on the phone. Dad, I'm coming with you. No, Kelly, you can't. Daddy, I'm not leaving you again. Please, I'll sit in the car. He just didn't have time to argue. Especially since she jumped into his new car faster than he did. Jack sped off, but why is there no communication there? He can't even give Cindy a warning. The car was going smoothly down the highway. I wonder what their gap is. Sam had a very nice car. They flew up to the woods. Jack saw Sam's car right away. The car was low and he couldn't go any farther. But the village people were kind enough to tell him how to get there. He took off at a run. Kelly after him. You promised you'd stay in the car. Dad, I'm coming with you. That makes two of us. They ran out into the clearing. In front of the house stood Cindy Hare shot up on a chair, a fresh bruise. And in front of her stood Sam. He had a gun in his hand. Cindy, She looked fearfully at Jack. Jack, no, he won't touch me. But Sam had already turned the barrel toward him and was looking at Jack. Defender Chick showed up. Now you're going to go where you've been for the last few months. Why the hell did you get in where you didn't need anything? Nobody's gonna be upset. You're already dead to everyone. Dim, stop. What are you doing? Don't you realize if you sit down once? No, I won't. You're already dead. And by the time they find your criticism, I'll be long gone. By the way, they pay a lot more for that kind of ability in other countries. And Sam laughed. Jack took a cautious step forward. Sam raised his arm and fired a shot about a second before. Kelly screamed, "Papa," and jumped forward. There was a deafening thud, and the girl collapsed in a sack at her father's feet. Kelly. And Jack collapsed beside her. Kelly is mine. Sam turned pale, dropped the barrel, sank slowly into the grass. I didn't mean to. Jack saw his daughter smile one last time and close her eyes. No, and his terrible cry frightened all the birds. Echoes echoed high in the branches. Quickly bring her to my house. Jack looked at Cindy, not realizing anything quickly that looked running. It was as if Jack had woken up. He picked his daughter up in his arms and rushed after Cindy. She ran ahead of him, all swung around, and started for the floor. Cindy. As he laid his daughter down, Cindy pulled out some candles, some books. Jack looked at her. And I'm not leaving. Elita shoved him roughly. Go away, out of the way. We're wasting time. Jack on cotton legs went outside. There were already people there. Sam was handcuffed. Jack rushed him into the driveway, blocked Rick. Shoo. What? He's Kelly. He killed Kelly. Rick yelped. Rick appeared next to him. Where is she? Jack nodded at the house. I need to look in there, get some help. She's dead. No, that can't be. Rick moved toward the house. Jack got in his way. You can't. Cindy said can't. Time was running out. They sat on the ground side by side, facing each other. An ambulance had long since arrived and a police car was standing by. Once again, a policeman approached them. Look, we understand, but we can't wait any longer. You realize what would happen if the child was alive, and in the meantime she died because of the care she received. 10 minutes, please. No, we're all going inside. At that moment, the door swung open and a woman came out of the house. She was holding Kelly's hand. Or was Kelly holding hers? Kelly. Jack rushed over to her. The girl stared at him uncomprehendingly. Daddy, I just saw you all over there. The girl pointed her finger upward. Rick glanced over. Kelly's dress was covered in blood, true, already dried. But it was clear from everything that she was on her chest. No one realized anything. Cindy suddenly started to fall. Jack picked her up. Everybody into the ambulance. You follow. The elderly doctor gave orders quickly. Rick, and Jack sat in the resident's chair. The doctor shook his head. Never in my life would I have believed these delusional stories. But the girl really did have an injury, and while yesterday, when she was brought in, I would have said the wound was a couple months old. Today it feels like it was a couple years ago, and the passage and scar continue to heal. I've never seen anything like it. As for Lydia's woman, things are also very strange. Outwardly, she is quite normal, not thin, not emaciated. The body is emaciated, as if she hasn't eaten or drank for at least a month. And she's been working hard. I don't like things that don't make sense. I don't know what to make of it. The men smiled. Jack asked, Don't look, you can. Yes, you can. The doctor waved his hand. I don't know what I can and can't do anymore. Jack quietly entered the room. Cindy lay with her eyes closed and suddenly smiled. I thought you'd left me. He sat down next to her, and the woman opened her eyes. Are you crazy? I'll never leave you ever. I got it. Jack, I need you to know that I don't have the gift anymore. Jack exhaled. That's great. You're going to be a real regular woman. You really are glad. She looked at him strangely. Of course I am. You helped. I'm not arguing. I'm proud. I admire you. You saved me, my daughter, and hundreds of people. But you have to be a woman to be cared for, to be loved. She got up and hugged him. I love you, just you know. Once in a lifetime you can give your gift for a human life. Jack understood everything. He realized the price Cindy had paid to save his daughter. "Do you regret it?" "No, I'd do it again." He kissed her. "Believe me, there's a lot of good in ordinary life. I'll be sure to show you how wonderful it is to just live."